Oh, hey guys, welcome back to the Model Railroad. And we have not been out here in a little while, but this is Dan here, and I want to give you guys a progressive update here on everything that I've gotten accomplished, thanks to some friends, a lot of effort, and a lot of great YouTubers here who have helped me out in the comments and through a lot of different ways. The community is great in that sense because you get a lot of support where you need it, and I'm very grateful for that. But before we get into all that stuff, what I want to go ahead and get you guys caught up on is the model railroad itself. For any new people, this is a model railroad of the location of Fostoria, Ohio, the famous Iron Triangle location. And I've basically modeled two sections of Fostoria, Ohio here. And what it is the B&O East End on a street called Columbus Avenue. There's a staging yard, a siding, and a really cool Y turnout. And then essentially the main line would be going west. Here you'd be looking east, but obviously because of the confines of a model railroad, everything's curved off, when in reality this would keep going west and that'd go east. And then on the other side of the model railroad, I've modeled another location in Fostoria known as the C&O Yard. And it basically consists of a couple of different yard tracks, a siding, and then two main lines that cross over the B&O, technically over here. It's very confusing, but just bear with me here. To get you guys caught up, where we were at was basically we had one section pretty much accomplished and finished, and we had gone through, done scenery work, and I started working on these modules, and this is where I started actually running into issues. Originally I used Electrofrog switches on this section, and this is where the problems began, because the Electrofrog turnouts have the unisolated frog, and every time your locomotives go over that unisolated frog, they short out, and it is a complete nightmare. The other thing I messed up originally too was that the Electrofrog and the Insulfrog switches all have wiring that runs underneath the switch, and what it is this little piece of wire right here. They all have this, and what I failed to do originally when I installed most of these switches, I didn't remove this wire, but essentially out of the package, this wire bridges across the frog here like this, and you essentially have a short. So on DC-DCC trackage, this causes a short. Well, so for anyone who remembers the last video I posted out here, we had issues with the short. We found the short. A couple of friends came out, and in one day we knocked quite a good portion of this layout out trying to find problems and troubleshoot things. And sure enough, these little bastards were causing 2 or 3 different shorts, actually 4 in different locations. And then we had some other short outs from suitcase connector clips. If you recall, the main bus that I had installed was with suitcase connectors. Look at this. These things are okay, and they worked fine until I got to a new batch of these things. And what ended up happening is that the little stems there where you're supposed to clamp down wouldn't clamp all the way, so essentially your feeder wire would go all the way through that, and then it would come in contact with the little insulated section, the little plastic piece inside this joint piece, right? Inside the suitcase connector, so it would hit that and essentially short out. So a number of these suitcase connector joints had short issues, and this is again what goes back to what a lot of people rant about with suitcase connectors, is that that's a common problem, and it's something I wish I would have kind of understood about long before I started this model railroad. But in hindsight, a large number of these do work, and I'm not condemning suitcase connectors, but they did cause me some problems, and that was inevitable with a large model railroad like this. This was a large project to start with. We're talking essentially 100 feet of track here. It's a lot. This whole thing runs all the way around, and we had to basically correct some things. So the first thing I had to do was replace switches. The first thing I did was I eliminated the Electrofrog switches and went all Insulfrog or Unifrog Pico switches. This eliminates the issue with the short. I've removed all the wiring underneath these things so that there's absolutely nothing coming in contact with any of these rails. And these are all power routed, so you have your feeder wires essentially ahead of the switch, and anything that goes through this track now will run nice and smooth all the way around. We tested all this after we joined it all together, and it worked perfectly. All this was nice and smooth. This switch we had to replace. I replaced all 3 of these. This switch was one we replaced as well. You can see this is a brand new section, an Insel Frog, modified of course so that it didn't cause any problems. And the other thing we had to do was a crap ton of track cleaning. There was a lot of oxidation, corrosion, and things like that. Other issues were track kinking. That's another common thing that you're going to encounter on a model road, especially a large one like this. Tracks have a tendency to tighten up, and in this case I had to repair quite a few little sections where there were some kinks. And as you can see, there's still a few that I have to address by basically going in and adding some solder to the joiner, putting pressure on it and allowing it to set, dry up, and basically harden that joint so that it forces that back into position. Now, in some cases, that's all you need to fix those, but the other issue, and the other nightmare I ran into, we've had a couple harsh winters so far, and one of the big problems that took place was in these joints through here, where I cut this off, it was a nightmare because the kinks were so bad, your rail would be bent so bad. Any truck of a locomotive or freight car going through these turnouts would just derail. So it was a serious problem and it had to be fixed. So I ended up tearing out these two sections of track all the way up leading up to these switches, since I was replacing these switches anyway, and I had to redo them with new Code 100 turnouts and reconnected them and spliced them in to the other modular section here. That fixed the problem in the curve. Now, just to talk about this very briefly, on this other end here was the exact same problem. What happened over time, things start to shift around, tighten up, loosen up. Sure enough, these curves here, they bunched up, caused a major derailment point here. Nothing could go through this turnout without derailing. So I had to cut out, sand, grind down, and splice in new sections of track to repair this. And you can see I've had to adjust the grade level so that this is as level as possible. And I've had to also do a little bit of a modification to this piece of bench work here. And it just goes to show you gotta be very careful and you gotta expect this kind of thing. I was as precise as I could be with these bench work sections when I modified them. They fit perfectly in originally when I first put these and installed them. Shit, all the way back in COVID 2020, what a nightmare. Everything fit fine, but as time went on, things adjusted, and this is what happens. This is something else, warning you guys ahead of time. This is something you have to expect is going to happen, and you have to learn how to compensate, how to do repairs. And in this case, I kind of wish I had left some of this unscenic and undone, because obviously I have had to tear up some ballast. It is easy to repair, but it does suck because you obviously have to go back and tear up work that you've started. Again, while we're on this section here, I had to completely redo this section here because I had a kink points at this end here, and I had two shorts in this section where the feeder wires weren't working, so I replaced the bad connections with direct soldered connections underneath on this bus wire here, so they're actually soldered in, and that's how I recommend you do any kind of feeder wire installation on a large layout. Run your feeder wires from your rails to the bus line, and then skin the insulation off your bus line and solder them, and then wrap your wire around that basically, and then solder it. And you'll have a great connection every time. The suitcase connectors, they might work, they might not. It's risky, and I wish in hindsight I would have done most of this feeder wire work with the soldering technique. I tried to save some steps, thought I could save some time and money, and it turned out to be an Achilles heel. It worked, but it also didn't work at the same time and created more work, is what I'm trying to say. So anyways, on this end here, you can see since we were working on this did kind of shift over, so I got to readjust these a little bit and fix that. We'll talk about this section when we come back around, but yeah, I replaced this switch. This was originally an Electrofrog. Ripped that thing up because fuck that. Replaced it with an Insel Frog, modified it, works fine. Power routes through. We tested all this out because originally the short with my DCS 210 was over here, and we had to try to find everything. Of course, we found the short by basically cutting our bus in half down this section here. We actually cut the feeders off, and then we cut the bus off, and we were able to isolate just this section of the B&O over here from the signal bridge on up was powered. So we were able to quickly narrow down that there were some issues over here. And now this leads us to where we are damage-wise. You can see switches are missing. What did I just talk about? Switch problems. What did I do wrong? Electrofrog switch here for my for my B&O siding in the main line. Past Columbus Avenue crossing, wool is right here, an Electrofrog switch, and of course pulled that bastard up, that wire right across that rail, direct short right here. This is why you got to know what you're doing before you get too serious like this, like I did. And because of this, now I got to do all this cleanup, reballast, install a new switch, and then, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but this all could have been avoided, and I could have saved so much trouble if I had just known what I was doing. This is why, you know, you guys need to get as much input, advice, read up on this stuff, learn as much as you can before pursuing a project like this so you avoid these mistakes. These are crucial mistakes that can completely shut down an entire model railroad, and just a couple pieces of track were what shut down this entire thing. But the good news is we made a lot of progress. We were able to tackle and address tons and tons of problems with this model railroad that I've been struggling with for 2 years now in one day. And I can't thank my friends enough for coming out here to help me. They were fantastic with being able to teach me how some soldering techniques, showing me where to look for problems, and now I feel very confident in pursuing the next step in this model railroad by going in, finishing up the wiring on the yard section. So now let's go ahead and get into all the other things that we've addressed. So we basically have a model railroad. I can run a train around this whole thing now, except the yard lead. So this is not powered yet. I haven't installed any feeders to this yet. This track is dead. Everything in the yard all the way around coming into here is dead. Now there's other switches that I still have to replace. This switch here, this is an Electrofrog. As you can see, it's all one solid piece. This has got to go. This is causing a short. We determined that very quickly because we had track power up to this and then it died on the switch. This is a problem, so this has to go. This over here, you notice that I actually did some little notes. Repair hump ×2, yard section ×3 feeders. What does that mean? This indicates that I have to pop in feeders, so 3 sets of feeders for these yard tracks to power them, to power out through all this. This should be able to power all this turnout here, and then of course when we get into this section, 1 set of feeders in the section should do that as well, but that'll be for later. The hump. Another issue with the model railroad bench work is it has a tendency to bunch together and rise a little bit. As you can see, we have a very noticeable hump here. Notice how the tracks are raised up there. That's a problem, especially for 6-axle locomotives, because that lead truck or rear truck, whichever one it is, will go over that, and one of the wheels will lift up over the rail and short out, and the locomotive effectively stops. That is a problem. So I'm going to have to go up and basically lift these tracks up. I'm probably going to cut these out so I can lift these sections up, and basically I'm going to go in, sand this cork roadbed down a couple inches inward. I'm going to sand all this down and then go in, pop the sections of track back in, re-glue them down, and that should solve the problem. There's a couple humps on the model railroad. We determined this one is a major one here, and then over here, the other one. Notice that the notes are there, so that indicates which tracks we got to repair. And again, you can see, if we look down the track here, there's the humps. This is absolutely something you need to avoid if you're going to be running a model railroad. You got to watch for this kind of thing because this is a serious problem, and this will screw you up every time. So this is something I'm going to have to repair as well. So this is another hump I'm going to have to take care of. Now, in terms of the yard section here, these are Insulfrog switches. These are all brand new Insulfrogs. I laid out this turnout here. These are not glued in place yet because we were still testing the track. We have some risers here that we installed to help align the switch a little bit better and level it out. Everything runs and power outs through this turnout perfectly. It's the first time we've ever run anything on this new section. You can see we've marked out areas where we've gone back and redone the feeder wires correctly to eliminate shorts. That is another big thing that we've repaired. This entire section has been rewired, so this is all good to go. All basically we need to do now is glue these in place, make any kind of adjustments, then glue it in place, and then it's pretty much ready to go. And then I can determine over time if I need to add more feeders. In this section here, again, brand new feeders were added to repair all this. Originally, none of this was powered. In just about an hour, this entire section was dead, and in an hour, we had the entire thing up and running. With brand new feeders, it was a fantastic amount of work we got done very quickly with a lot of help, and it worked just flawlessly. The yard lead and everything on this end, getting up to speed over here now. We repaired this turnout here. This turnout is a brand new one. This is a Insulfrog. This is one I had installed over the winter last year, so I started repairing these. These turnouts are all good here. These are all repaired and ready to go. I can run a train around these perfectly. We polished and cleaned tons and tons of this track as well, so it's ready to go. So there's going to have to be a very good amount of track cleaning involved with this layout, but that's just part of it as well. So you can see there's just a whole bunch of little notes. This is something I had originally written down a while back, dead section, indicating that these tracks needed repairs. This is all done, so this is a big relief. All that is finished. This yard lead here, I just got to tack in a set of feeders here, and then you can see there's one already done here to route us into this switch. This switch here has to come up because for some stupid reason, when I went and bought switches originally, I bought an Insulfrog switch and then I bought an Electrofrog. I have no idea how I mixed that up and why they were all different. This switch was causing a short, so we had to cut it off, and as you can see, it's been nipped in here and here, so it's isolated. So this just basically needs to be pried up and removed. It's useless. We can't use it on the layout, so this has to go. Other than that, I'm not going to do anything else with the yard. I'm going to get all this 100% operational. It's going to run. And I am not going to do any scenery over here. I'm going to let this set. I want to at least go maybe another couple months, maybe into summer next year, 2023, before I even think about doing any scenery, because I want to absolutely make sure 100% that this track is running and that I'm not going to have any other problems. This is crucial, and this is the lessons I learned, the bitter lessons I learned over here. I jumped the gun because I wanted to do scenery, buried the problems underneath everything, and now we've had to go through and dig everything up, and that's the problem. Okay, so anyways, back over in the finished section, you can see we had to run this little section over here just temporarily so that we could actually have our power pack, but I'm going to have to try to neatly conceal this when we get it all cleaned up. And then another big project is going to have to be concealing this bus line with little tacks, just kind of stapling it basically to the underside of this plywood to go ahead and hide it. I don't really need the booster. I'll be able to run this layout in a couple of engines for the most part. However, I will hold on to it just in case, because honestly you never know. Never know what will happen. So I'm going to hold on to it. All this is working flawlessly now. We perfected the system and it's running really well. So now let's get into some other scenery things I did. Like I said, this ballast has been in place for almost 2 years now, and over time the ballast started to crack. And the reason was because when I did my glue ratio, I didn't add enough glue and it was mostly diluted down. So when I sprayed all this in, it tacked in fine, but over time it started to crack. And as you can see, it's still not 100% perfect. There's still some areas that I have to repair. The yard section and all this is fine. This is held up very, very well. The main line is what really got a lot of issues with the ballast, and so I've gone in and I've repaired a lot of this ballast over the last couple of weeks, getting all this up to par again. You can see again there's still some minor cracks here and there that we have to repair, but that's simple. You just basically wet this down, add a little glue, maybe a little more ballast to blend this out if you have to. But other than that, that's another thing. So as you can see, the laundry list of things still continues. This is going to be another annoying thing, because as you can see over here we also have a track hump, and that's a problem. This last what is this, track 2 in particular, mainline track 2, we have a short here because of the hump. I'm going to have to go in and cut this section of track out and correct that by basically sanding down the cork roadbed and leveling it back out to repair that. And I'm also going to try to address this seam, because as you can see we have a very nasty separation seam there that we're going to have to repair. So as you can see, this note here indicates what we need to do, and probably be helpful if I actually had the camera on what I was trying to film. So anyways, this signal bridge I'll have to just carefully lift up. It's just glued in place, so all I have to do is just go into there and I can just pull it up, set it aside. So I'll repair these 2 tracks. I don't need to do the B&O siding here, fortunately. I will have to grind out this ballast and then level this back down, take all the glue off, and I'll just basically plop in the new switch once that arrives. But as you can see, we were able to very carefully cut around everything and then just lift the switch out, removed all the junk, and it's basically prepped to go in for final cleaning. And basically what I'll do is I'll just level all this ballast back out with the grinder on my Dremel, and then I'll install the switch, make sure that's all working and it's powered properly, and then I will essentially go in and I'll just ballast and blend everything back together, and that should solve that problem. That should take care of it. Over here, not really much to report. Everything's still holed up, looking pretty good. I love the scenery over in this section of the Columbus Avenue. May go in, of course, probably add some vehicles and things like that. But over here, there's some other little things like this seam here I got to kind of address. But that's other things that I can do in time. And then, of course, this last switch is here. Well, the other one that we ripped up is the yard lead for the B&O 3-track staging yard there, storage yard. So I'm going to have to get a new switch. It's already ordered. And I'm going to have to plop that down. So the same process as this switch down here. I'm probably going to do both at the same time. And then I'll ballast at the same time and things like that. Over here in this corner, we determined that there is also a dead spot over here. The issue is the next set of feeders is over here, and then there's no feeders on this end up until this point. Or there was. As you can see, we redid these, so I got to route them up and then solder them to this track still. But there's a dead spot over here where there's not enough power. So I'm going to run 2 sets of feeders right here through the ballast, and I'll solder them to the rails, and then I'll just blend it all back together, repair the ballast, and that should take care of that. So these little notes here are helpful because they let me know kind of the level of work that I need to be done. We got the throttle working good. We drained a battery, so I got a brand new battery for this thing, and that's working fine. So we're not out of the woods yet, guys, but I have to say I'm just thankful that the layout is actually running. And I'd have a train running for you guys right now if I actually had a DCC ready locomotive at the moment, but I don't have one that's actually finished and ready to go. But when I get a chance, I'll try to show a locomotive running around this thing so you guys can actually see a train running for the first time on this. And I think that'll be exciting. So I know this one got really long, guys, but we had a lot to catch up on. And I appreciate you guys bearing with me on this because I know a lot of people have been like, Dan, when are you going to show us the layout? What's going on, man? This is what's going on. It's been a nightmare going in and rectifying all these problems, but we're on the last miles here, so to speak, in terms of running. What's going to be coming next is a lot of scenery work, a lot of modification, a lot of work over here to get all this done, but I'm not in any hurry at all. I've learned a lot of valuable lessons here, and it really, again, comes to what I said in the beginning. Take your time, learn from your mistakes, and just be patient, and that's really all I got to say for now. So I'll keep you guys posted on anything else I do out here. I'll let you guys know once I get these switches in, and I'll let you guys know about that, and we'll show you guys a train running on this thing. So I appreciate you guys staying tuned here. We got quite a bit more to go, but we're almost there. And I will definitely keep you guys posted. I'll try to post some pictures here and there on my social media too. So, all right, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. Stay tuned for more. Take it easy.